Alright, so let's see. I'm out here testing this lens because I'm thinking, like, can I shoot an entire film with one lens? I mean, is that really what I'm thinking of doing? Like one prime focal length. That's it. One prime lens. One focal length. 35 millimeters for the whole film. f1.8 to f16. Anamorphic. Which means I'm going to have to figure out how to make everything look right in my software, because I have no idea how to do that yet. Like I figured it out yesterday, but I can't even reproduce it. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have these tables, you know, these math tables. There's some kind of division and multiplication and square roots and all this crazy stuff. So I have 1.33 de-squeeze rate. I don't know. But the thing is, it looks so good. I mean, I have to do it, right? Like, I have to serve the work. You know, whatever looks best is what I'm going to do. You know, whatever is the most inspiring for the story, you know, whatever connects, whatever is like, feels emotionally right. That's what I'm going to do. And, you know, it's not really surprising that I'm picking the most difficult way to do it, because that's what I have always chosen the most difficult path. Like right now, I'm sitting here and there are airplanes flying over, so the audio is going to be weird. You know? There's a plane right there. Crazy. So I always pick the hardest path. I don't know why. I don't know why I do that, but I've always done it. Sitting out here in the cold doing this right now, but that's part of the film, you know, which of course is set in the dead of winter. So I have to shoot in the dead of winter. So I have to have cameras that can deal with that kind of cold. I have to have weather sealed equipment, which this lens is not weather sealed. So I got to figure out how to protect it. I'm going to be near water, I'm going to be near sand, I'm going to be near rocks, I'm going to be near lakes, I'm going to be near cities, like all over the place. It's not exactly going to be in a controlled environment. Man, and honestly, I'm be happy. I mean, I love this process. I love making art. I love creating stories, you know, that deal with difficult things. I mean, I'm not the funny guy, I'm not a comedy guy, I'm not the light guy. Everything's kind of heavy, everything's serious and meaningful. Another plane, jeez. So, as much as I love the process and I love learning and I love performing and I love filmmaking now, if I'm being really honest, I'll be really happy when this shooting is over, because this has been a really difficult experience for me, this particular film. You know, I'm like, third part of a trilogy. The first part was my very ambivalent search for my biological mother. And I mean, like, I didn't give a shit. I didn't want to know about it. I didn't think about it. You know, my whole life, people are like, don't you want to know, like, about your real mother? And I'm like, yo, I have a real mother. Like, don't you want to know about, you know, what happened and why she gave you up? Yo, she didn't give me up. You have no idea what she did. And they're like, well, what did she do? Like, what happened? I couldn't answer that because I didn't know. And you know, I was always afraid I would hurt my adoptive parents, and even though I had a shitty relationship with them because I was a very difficult kid, still, you know. And anytime I did bring it up, which I did bring it up, you know, people who were not a part of my family, but extended people, would tell me I was ungrateful, I was disrespectful, I was inconsiderate, like all the selfish, you know, for even thinking about learning about my biological beginnings. So, you know, my head was all fucked up, you know, like I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what was right or what was wrong, what was appropriate. I just knew that I didn't really feel connected to anything, you know. So anyway, that's a whole other story. But, you know, so the first part of my trilogy of art was Broke Wide Open, which was my very, very ambivalent search for my biological mother, like I said. And the second part was after I actually found out real information about my biological mother, whose name was Judith. I made a movie called The Center of Distance, and that was the second part of the trilogy. And actually, I had written a play first. And that got canceled after 2 years of development because of the pandemic. And so I decided to make a movie. And I've talked about that in other videos, so. And now this, the third part of the trilogy, story of my relationship with my biological father. What's that all about? You know, why did I wait to do that last? Because, you know, when you think about it, you know, when it comes to foster care and adoption and things like that, nobody really ever talks about the father. I mean, if they do talk about the father, they only say, you know, absent father, he abandoned his family. Like, the narrative is rarely good, you know. But see, I've learned that the narratives are never accurate, you know, like, or I should say almost never accurate. Like, the mother did what was best for the child. She was a hero. Nah, most of the time, a child is taken from the mother against her will. Like, I've learned that that is an absolute fact. That most of the time, she's either coerced, she's young, she's made to feel like, you know, this is the worst possible decision that you could ever make in your life to take care of your child. Yeah, she doesn't just go, oh, I'm just going to do what's right for the child. In many cases, she's a child. She's 15, she's 16, whatever. So anyway, that was the second part of my trilogy, Judith's story, which, that was a tough story. You know, her life was pretty astounding, and I hope people watch that movie. I'm really proud of it. But now this, you know, my biological father, this is complicated, and this is really kind of like, this story is kind of like a metaphorical death for me. Like, I don't want to write about this anymore. I don't want to make my work all about my adoption and my foster care and my searching and my identity and who am I and what am I and all this kind of stuff. Like, I don't want to be stuck in this anymore. I want to get back to like what I did with the play that I wrote called Brooklyn Quartet, which was about the things that are important to me in life, you know, like racism and gentrification and white privilege and homophobia and sexism and love and loyalty and, you know, just life, you know, not all about me, like, oh, my adoption, my foster care, you know, like, I don't want to think about it anymore. So this is the end for me, this story. But it's going to be really good. But I'm challenging myself, you know, as usual, making this as hard as possible. But I guess what I wanted to share today, and now I'm going to look at the camera, because what I wanted to share today was something that I found that might be able to help a lot of people. And, you know, I want to possibly shoot this with an anamorphic lens, which is this lens right here. My Sirui 35mm f1.8 1.33 anamorphic lens. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to do it, but I'm thinking about it, because when I finally figured out how to make it look right on my software and DaVinci Resolve, it looked so good. I couldn't believe how good it looked. And so I've been doing an incredible amount of research on manual focus, you know, and obviously I know how to manually focus. You know, I've been doing nothing but manually focusing for the last few years since I started filmmaking, since I made my first movie, you know, The Center of Distance. I manually focused that whole thing. So I know how to manually focus, but I'm trying to figure out more interesting ways that I can do that to make it look like I am not, well, let me put it this way. I'm not trying to make it look like I'm manually focusing or not. I'm just trying to figure out how I can have more creative shots than to just focus on me, stand there, don't move, and make sure I'm in focus. Or, you know, set the camera to f22 so that everything's in focus. Like, I'm trying to figure out the nuances. So I've been studying zone focusing and, you know, what infinity really means and, you know, stuff like that. And so something I found recently, which I don't know, maybe this is like duh to everybody else, but to me, I thought I got to share this with people because this is perhaps now the most important piece of camera gear that I have. It's a tape measure. And on every manual lens, and I'm not going to do the YouTube thing where I show you a lens now and you see pictures of, like, everybody knows what a lens looks like, right? You have the aperture ring, you have the focus ring, and you have those numbers. And you have the numbers that represent your aperture, and you have numbers that represent your focus, and they're in feet and meters. And they go all the way to infinity, that figure 8 kind of thing. And so, depending upon your aperture, that's how much room you have to focus, right? Like if I have this at f1.8, I better not move all that much, otherwise I'm going to come in and out of focus, which actually looks kind of good sometimes. But, if you really want to nail focus, you better not move if you're at f1.8. If you're at f2.8, you have a little bit more room, 5.6, f8, f11, then you're pretty much in focus all the time. But if you want to really work with depth of field, if you really want to create some interesting backgrounds and interesting kind of environments behind the dialogue, you want to work with different apertures. You want to really work with that blurry background. You want to create some kind of bokeh. Maybe if you're using lights and shooting at night, and you want to create those cool kind of, circular orbs that you see. And, if I'm using the anamorphic lens, I'm going to have that flash, And so this allows me to, see how far I am from the camera lens, right? So right now, I'm exactly 6 feet from the camera. Now, something I don't know, I should have figured this out before I shot this video, but I don't know if I'm supposed to be focusing from the head of the lens or the camera. I'm assuming it's from the base of the camera where the lens inserts into the camera. That would make sense. Although, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that because the lens is focusing. So anyway, I set this at f5.6. I'm 6 feet away, so I have some leeway. So I should be in pretty good focus right now. And it just made me realize, like, this is everything. Because I can now, with this, create exactly what I want a scene to look like. From the background to the subject to the foreground, I can create exactly what I want because I know exactly, precisely, specifically what I'm focusing on, where I'm focusing. And so, yeah, to those of you who already knew this, duh, right? But to people like me who didn't know, oh wow, helicopter. I didn't see one of those before. And obviously I'm not stopping and shooting all these things flying over my head. So you're going to have to use your imagination, and maybe if they're going right behind me, you could see them off into the distance. But anyway, yeah, one of the most important pieces of camera gear that I have in my bag is a tape measure, along with my ND filter and stuff like that, like my sound stuff, my lavalier mic and my audio recorder, my Zoom H1N. There are some things in my camera bag that are equally as important as my camera and my tripod and my gimbal and stuff like that. So I just wanted to share that. So that's it, and the rest of it is I'm out here trying to figure out exactly how I want to shoot the first scene of my movie. I'm starting to shoot in about 3 weeks. And so I don't want to share too much of that right now. I'm going to let that be organic, but I am promising to share every step of the way. I'm going to be shooting for quite a long time. I want to share what I feel is appropriate in terms of not ruining the movie for people who want to actually watch it, but also what I feel might help in the process of shooting a movie all by yourself, where you are the only person in the movie. That's not easy. I already did it with my phone, and that wasn't easy. And in an interesting kind of way, now that I know so much more about filmmaking, 3 years later, it's actually a little bit harder because I have so many more tools at my fingertips now that I know about, and I'm not talking about tools like lenses and cameras, I'm talking about knowledge, I have so much more in my head at my disposal that I know that if I am not lazy, and if I work really, really hard at this, and if I'm patient and take my time, and if I'm really meticulous, and if I, learn my lines, and I'm going to have the acting part of it. Obviously, that's what I do. That's what I am. I am a performing artist, so I know I have that. I don't have to worry if my actor knows his lines, and if he's emotionally ready to deliver everything. Like, I know that's going to happen. But the cinematographer part of it, the first DP, the second AC, like, I'm everything. I'm the sound person. I'm the grip. I'm the makeup. I'm the wardrobe. I'm the location scout. I'm everything. Now I have to really try to really do justice to this story, which is an important story, the last part of this 3-part trilogy, and in fact, the last part of probably something that's been really important for me to do. Absolutely, it's been something that's really, really important. I actually teach workshops and, performance workshops and writing workshops, and I tell artists that I personally believe that the most important story you could ever write, and in fact, before you write any other story, the story that you should write is your own story. Because you should only write about things that you know. And what do you know better than you? You know what I mean? And so these projects, my play Broke Wide Open, all these poems that I've written and these songs, and then the Red Plaid Suitcase, which was my play, and The Center of Distance, my film that I just finished, and now this. And again, this is the end for me. This is the last part of this, and yes, this is definitely a metaphorical death. It's also honoring some friends of mine who sadly took their own lives. And did you know that, I'm going to leave you with this, because this is something to think about and something to really kind of marinate over a little bit, because we tend to hear things sometimes, and we tend to take in statistics, or see something on the news, or see a documentary, or watch a movie, or whatever, or just hear from friends. We sometimes hear things that we just kind of take in, and they're a little shocking or disruptive in a way, but then we just move on, and go to the next thing in our lives, like, what am I going to watch on Netflix tonight, or what am I going to make for dinner, or I got to go pick up my kids, or whatever. But sometimes I think it's good to have a little bit more empathy and dive a little bit deeper into some of the things that you hear from other people that perhaps have nothing to do with you. But, realize that it all has something to do with you and me and everybody. Like, everything has to do with everybody. And so what I want to leave you with is that, and part of what I'm honoring in this film is that adoptees, people who are adopted, are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than anybody else.